So I get to fail first, which is great. So I run an AI startup. I'm very happy to be at Triple IT. Shameless plug, we are hiring. I've said this to everybody I've met. But we will follow the process for the first row. So, artificial intelligence is a lot about intellectual fierceness, right? Everybody thinks AI is about IQ and getting it right and data science and all of that stuff. But there's an epsilon here, like in most functions. And as I realized over a period of time, it's actually also about emotional resilience. Because if you have heart, all the brains in the world will want to work for you and work with you to solve problems. But if you don't have that, you're stuck. So as I realized in my 6-year-old journey being an entrepreneur, that I started approaching the problem all wrong. I started intellectually hard, and I've ended up, intellectually zero, because everybody who works for me is way, way smarter than I can ever be. And my focus is on making sure that their hearts and their minds are solving for infinity with complete energy, focus, and momentum at all times. So my stories with you guys are going to be my failures on emotional resilience, learning along the way, 3 stories. And all 3 of them fairly scary moments in my life in these 6 years. And, like a small conclusion at the end. So some of this might get intimate, but I promise to be no holds barred. So the year was 2012. I had secured $1 million in seed funding just on a business plan. And it was thanks to great people like Sandeep Murthy from Lightbox Ventures now, who just made a bet on a girl in a taxi with a piece of paper, who'd done a year of research and education and said, you know what? The answer to the problem is data. It is not more content. It is context, not more content. So this is when AI was not sexy, okay? We started doing that. So I was unafraid to begin with. But then during the course of running the company, when it came to me becoming many and a team around me, that's when fear started to creep in. Fear to the extent of the fact that I was blackmailed by my technology team for an entire year, where they refused to launch products, did dharnas in my own office against me, and I couldn't take a stand because I was scared who will run the product. It's pretty hard, As a CEO, you enter your office, and there are people there who don't want to work with you and who will dope and come to meetings. I'm not kidding. This is what happened. Because they were completely irreverent. They didn't care. And they knew that they were holding me hostage by the one thing I couldn't do as well as they could, which is code. And I had just raised a Series A. So $4 million in the bank. We're launching a re-architecture. By the way, if you do a tech startup, you're always freaking doing a re-arch. Okay? Because it's never good enough, the tech. And somebody came up with something new, and then you want to build that as well, right? And the engineers always feel like the business people, just don't appreciate tech enough, no matter how much you appreciate tech. Like today we run on a full stack of like React front end, whatnot, but we are still doing re-engineering because the back end microservice architecture is not, the best in the world. So this is a conversation that keeps happening. But at that point of time, I knew viscerally in my heart that there were unnecessary delays that were happening. What was actually happening was that they were trying to drag their stock vesting onto the second year. I found out that they started doing a startup on the side. I did not confront them because I was scared. It got to a point where my board members started to sit in on my management meetings. And the deepest self-doubt crept in. And then one day, when the React was not launched, and there were 2 months from their 2-year vesting, which is something my stupid mind could not even comprehend they were doing at the time, I started quivering in the office. And I called in my head of product and my head of growth, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to let them go. Will you stand by me? I still have goosebumps saying this to you. And they stood in front of me, and they said, we've got your back. We had one developer. We were a tech startup, raised Series A, one of the hottest startups in EdTech at the time. And I fired my entire tech team. And I moved to Bangalore with one developer. I discovered being unafraid again. But I could never bring back that 1.5 years of traction, which is so crucial in the early days of a startup. But then I made my product free at a time where everybody else was making money in edtech. Because I said, I started a company believing in data. I want to understand what data and what feedback can clearly impact learning outcomes. Then I became so unafraid that, I'm standing here today. But the point is, never forget to act on what you see. Because no one can bring that time back. And that's related to another story, which is story number 3. Let's come to the next one. Vulnerability. So, I love this. You have this T-Hub here, and then, you've got this awesome faculty trying to bring in funding and incubation and this and that. The one thing nobody teaches you is to be vulnerable and say, I don't know. What are you talking about? Okay. So here's what happened. So when we raised Series A, just about 3 months after that, I had this really cool person come onto my board. His name is Prashant Mehta. He was the same guy who started doubting me and then, started to sit in on my management review meetings. That, is she not a good manager? Is that why the tech team's not performing? At that time, all we knew how to do was physical sales. So the product was something like, let me sell you deep, deep analytics on how you consume education. Remember, it was all about context. And when I'm selling you this analytics, I'm going to pitch you in person. I'm going to look into your eyes and show you what the benefit is. And we used to end up with a 40% conversion rate on $200 a pop. Okay? He came and told me softly, Aditi, have you thought about digital? Because that's where you'll really start to collect the data. Remember, in the beginning, there was only an idea. There was no approach. All I knew in my gut was, when I was studying for my engineering, I did not study chemistry because I believed that I don't like it. But nobody told me I should have cared. So that was information asymmetry. And I was like, there is so much more of that from the research that we did, both primary and secondary. So I just started to, you just throw like a ball of wool and it starts to unravel. And then you see where it goes. And then you get more people throwing more balls of wool in that direction. And they're all different. And suddenly you knit this like big vision, which just becomes insane. And now it's the largest AI platform in education in the world for education. Did I say that twice? Sorry. Okay. So my point is that he sat in front of me and said this. I said, yeah, sure, I got it. So I told my head of growth to dream up a presentation on digital marketing, and I still remember his first line was, so we've learned that marketing that's digital is digital marketing. Last month, we had 6 million organic users on the platform, even though we are still on our first beachhead market, okay? But we started with counting, there's a user on, 1, 2, 3, when the website went live, right? And the primary source of customer acquisition was offline. If I had only asked Prashant then, Prashant, what do you mean go digital? Because he was the CEO of Comely Media before he came on board, which is one of the largest digital marketing companies in India. I would have been in a very, very different position very soon. So there's this entrepreneurship VC dance, okay? Where the VCs are like, no, we don't want to go too close because you don't want to like mollycoddle the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur knows best. And then the entrepreneur is like, he's the VC, he gave me money, and because of our mindset, the boss-employee mindset, which somehow never really leaves you, right? You end up not asking the questions even after getting the funding. You face your employees. I remember I was like, we've got to go digital and collect more data. My board said, what are you doing about it? I could not sleep at night, and I had this like pit in the base of my stomach, but I wouldn't tell my team. Because I didn't want to be vulnerable in front of my team. Then one day, I got up, and I said, guys, we have to get to 3 million users. How do we do it? And then this person from Flipkart started talking, and then another person started talking, because we had a great team. I just never asked them that question. Now what I've realized is being deeply vulnerable and intellectually curious is one of the biggest assets you could have as a leader. Because you go in front of the smartest people in the world, and if you try and act smarter than them, or don't ask them the question, what do you mean? Then you're not leveraging what you need to leverage. So saying I don't know more often than let me show you how actually ends up making you a much better leader and a much better CEO and a much better human being. Undermining yourself, does not mean that you become self-effacing. I mean, it's not undermining yourself. It's about just taking a step back and taking it easy and being very, very secure about what's inside you and letting people express themselves and then being the synthesizer or the orchestrator. It's not about being the one who plays the lead on every instrument in the band. And that creates magic. So they had a leadership evaluation survey at Kalari Capital to see who is the best CEO and the worst CEO, and they did a 360-degree evaluation. Guess who came out on the bottom during that period? Me, okay? And I was like, what? How did this happen? Because, like, I'm clearly this amazing, empathetic, intellectually sharp person who understands everything about everything. I was this defensive, annoying person who did not want to take an ounce of criticism from somebody. This was year 3 of my startup, okay? And I was 6 years out. Like, I've changed, but I'm just saying it. And I just did not want to, because I was so full of trying to protect this thing I've created and making sure that nobody's able to say something that undermines it. I didn't want to hear anything about my technology team, because when anybody said something, it would make me feel my own failure all over again. I didn't want to hear anything about what we're doing in education, because of the slowed growth, everybody else had moved on. I remember competition, quote unquote, back in the day, tweeted, "We are going to acquire this company." I remember what it took to stay quiet during that period, and just carry on. I mean, come on, you do have some kind of an ego, right? So then I spoke to this leadership coach. So there are 2 people I credit for this. Is Ravi Venkatesan, who was until recently on the board of Infosys, and Pratap Nambiar, who's his partner in this leadership coaching firm. And I really believe it's super important to get a close set of mentors who keep you honest. And Pratap, I gave him this long spiel about how I'm building the most amazing company in the world and how I really care. So Imbibe is a deep personalization company. Our motto in life is we want every child to have a no regrets journey through life. That's the vision we're chasing. Okay? What could be more powerful than that? And yet everything was blocked and nothing was working. And he told me something. He says, "Aditi, you've got a light shining inside you, which is this vision and this passion that you have that wants to manifest itself onto the world. And somewhere in the world, there is this person sitting saying, where is this education company, okay, that if I give resources to, will actually manifest this destiny on the world? And you know why you're never going to meet him now or her? It's because they can't see you. You're so blocked. Your energy is so blocked. It's so smoky and cloudy around you. It's because through all of the mistakes you've made, you've forgotten to forgive yourself. And, dust up, get up, and say, you know what? I'm trying hard. And it's an important problem I'm chasing. And I'm a good person. And it's okay. It's okay to fail. And the moment he said that, I felt like there was a weight that went off like my shoulders. I don't know if any of you guys read the classics, but there was this book called The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Anybody read that book? It's too old school. Okay, you guys are very young. But even for the oldies, you guys have not read it. I'm not calling you old, which is fine. So, point is that I felt like this burden fell off my back, okay? And then I just felt like I was flying. And I just could not wait to get to the office in the morning. And I could not wait to tackle the next problem. And now everybody I meet, I'm like, hi. We're solving this exciting problem. Isn't this interesting? We don't even have to say, would you like to join us? And things just start to happen. And I'm super fortunate now that the average tenure of leadership in our team is more than 4 years, which is not the case for most startups in India, because Imbibe has now become all heart. So to summarize, let me say something very important. Everybody asks, especially when you're an education startup in AI, they're like, what are the skills needed to survive in the new world, right? So maybe let me give you my version of that. I feel like there are 3 very, very critical skills. And we're working to fix our education system so that these become central in what we learn. The first is to feel, empathy, because machines cannot empathize. They cannot feel, because feeling gives you that X factor that makes you go that extra mile. You know what feelings are, right? Being able to understand a person, being able to understand what motivates them, what would turbocharge a relationship. The second thing is imagination itself, unencumbered by ego, by putting on faces. Empathy and imagination. And then, of course, there is the ability to communicate with machines, which I'm sure your teachers are teaching you enough of, which is to code. 3 skills. And therefore, my failure lesson to you guys is, you could fail to invent, and you'll get up and you'll do it again. But you can never fail to feel. Thank you.